Star Wars is a franchise that I can assume most people have seen or have heard about. It has a loyal fan base, much as it is extreme as it can be. There is a fan base, and it has been celebrated for decades. So, for somebody to kind of do a copycat of Star Wars, you better make it either your own or it better be different enough to where it could stand amongst the other copycats, or at the very least things that have inspired Star Wars. If you don't waste anybody's time. And I mean that.
A new age for the universe.
Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, is directed by Zack Snyder with a screenplay by Zack Snyder, Kurt Johnstad, and Shay, Hatten, and a story by Zack Snyder himself. The film stars Sofia, Djimon, Hounsou, Ed Skrein, Michiel, Huisman, Doona, Ray Fisher, Charlie Hunnam, and Anthony Hopkins. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, when a peaceful settlement on the edge of a distant moon finds itself threatened by a tyrannical ruling force, a stranger living among its villagers becomes their best hope for survival. Zack Snyder is a filmmaker that unfortunately has not had the best track record with me, besides maybe Army of the Dead, but now that that series has now been canned, it's the only good thing that I have seen of his, and maybe even Legends of Guardians, The Owls of Cthulhu, but it had been a long time since I've seen that film. I had never seen both his earlier works, which was Dawn of the Dead remake and 300, so I'm going off of the things I have seen him make. I have not been a huge fan of his DC films, nor am I a huge fan of Watchmen, his take on it at the very least. And now I can safely say with confidence that Rebel Moon is definitely going to be one of those movies. This latest film by Snyder, originally going to be a Star Wars film before being canceled by Disney once they had acquired the rights to Lucasfilm, has been changed into his own Star Wars, if you will. After watching it back in December, I did a review on my Instagram about it, and rewatching this in preparation for when I was seeing the second part, I'm glad that this isn't a Star Wars film. Rather, I'm glad that he never got to make a Star Wars film, to be honest. But before giving my criticisms, here are some positives that I have with the film. The performances are decent. Everyone in the cast does their best with the material that they are given. They really give it their all as best as they can, because the writing in this movie is a big problem, but at the very least, the actors are legit, I think, trying. They are giving it everything they got with this material. I think the one that does stand out the most is definitely Sofia, an up-and-coming French actress who has appeared in pretty big blockbusters, and so for her to try her hand at sci-fi like this, she does give her all, and I wish her the best with regards to her career and her future, because, yeah, I mean, she is easily, for me, the best part of this movie, as much as my problem stems with the writing, but for the most part, I think everyone is fine in the film. The direction is admirable. I can say with confidence that director Zack Snyder really shows his passion for this film and, like, this universe. You can really tell even when he was making the film that he was putting all of his effort and his vision and his creativeness into this movie. Snyder is dedicated to this universe. Overall, I really do believe that this man does want to continue with this universe because it interests him, and because he never got to make a Star Wars movie, this was his chance to make one. So for that, I can give him some admiration with regards to what he was trying to make with this film. The music is enjoyable. Composer Tom Holdenberg crafts an operatic score that gives the film some life to it. One of the bigger highlights of the movie overall. As much as you could say some of the scoring in this film can sound much like Star Wars or like Lord of the Rings, I give Tom Holdenberg credit in that he is putting his all into this project, and you could really tell there was a sense of care with regards to what kind of style Snyder was going for, so Holdenberg matched kind of like what his style was going for as well. Yeah, overall I thought the music was enjoyable, although I will say it does derive from a lot of science fiction films. It is one of the better highlights. The cinematography is stellar. Snyder, who also serves as the cinematographer, makes for a gorgeous film that captures his vision completely. Aside from the color palette, which I have never been a fan of his color palette in most of his movies, it's a beautifully shot movie. You can really see how much of the work is put into the shots that he wants to do. You can really tell that he is a very visualized director. He really sees what he wants to make. He wants to make a film that breathes style, but also homages to a lot of films that inspired this, Star Wars being one of them, but of course, Akira Kurosawa, which also inspired Star Wars. So you can really tell how much he was inspired by a lot of film history with regards to like science fiction or even older films of the 30s and 40s that went into the look of the film. The production is incredible. Snyder really knows how to pull a crew together while filming. It shows their hard work and dedication to the project. No matter what, I can at least safely say that Snyder knows how to bring together a production crew overall. He knows how to bring it all together. He's kind of like Michael Bay in a way, where Michael Bay, as much as I have a problem with his direction, although I could even say like his earlier works are much better, I can still say that Michael Bay does do a good job of making an ensemble of his production, you know, what he wants, what's going to happen. You know, he does a good job at that, and Snyder also does that as well. Aside from that, you guys, this film feels like a retread of not just Star Wars, but other sci-fi films together. And it astonishes me on how much this movie, it's not even so much borrowing, but rather feeling so much like a ripoff. So here are some of the negatives that I have. The story is so dull. Snyder clearly loves Star Wars, but misses the key element of what made Star Wars a huge success, the original, and even the subsequent sequels, but still, wonder. Everything that this film tries with regards to wonder feels bland and soulless. Throughout this entire movie, there is not a sense of wonder and awe. Star Wars knows how to do that. Regardless on what you feel about the quality of it now, Star Wars still knows how to pull in wonder. Especially when you watch the original trilogy, it is amazing to see how much Lucas brings in the wonder and awe of his galaxy. Snyder just clearly focuses on the style and nothing else. He does not recognize that there needs to be a sense of wonder in this story, or at the very least, a sense of urgency. Because honestly, I didn't feel that with this movie. The story pretty much drags throughout this entire film. The action sequences are generic. Any gunfight that the characters encounter are pretty standard and not exciting at all. Snyder tries to make them badass, but it doesn't in execution. I at first thought the action was fine when I first saw it, but rewatching, I'm like, man, the action here just feels so bland. And that has to do with the slow-mo, but we'll get to that later. I would say Sofia Boutella gives it her all in those sequences, but for the most part, most of the action just doesn't come off as very exciting. It just kind of feels like, again, comic book panel, just shots. You know, I would rather have motion in my movies, not, you know, a comic book still. If I wanted to do that, I would pick up a comic book. The writing is bland. Both Snyder, Johnstad, and Hatten create a script that takes every trope from Star Wars to even the director that inspired Lucas himself, Akira Kurosawa, in his films, but not in a unique way. Not at all. Also, some of the dialogue felt cringe and forced. Snyder has this habit of whenever he has characters talking, that they come off as feeling like they're so badass, they just scream cool, like the look of them. Star Wars can sometimes be, you know, in a way, lines of dialogue can't always be that great, but it is backed up by a story that does carry that plot, and you have actors who actually convey that story pretty well, unless you're talking about the originals. But the writing here is so cringy, and it felt so forced with some of the ways in which characters interact with one another that I just couldn't help but physically feel like just, no. This doesn't feel natural. This doesn't feel right. It just comes off as not authentic in some sort of way, or at the very least, not even authentic is even the word. I think just, it doesn't feel natural or organic. It just kind of feels artificial that way. The pacing and runtime is exhausting. The way each scene plays felt like it took its sweet ass time to get going. With a runtime of 2 hours and 14 minutes, this movie did not need to be that long. I don't understand why this movie is 2 hours and 14 minutes. For a part one, I feel like you should say enough on setting things up, but not doing it to where it extends the story and feeling like it's run its course. This movie goes on way too long and it explains way too much in that 2-hour runtime that I just don't think that it needed to explore every little detail. I understand this is the first film, but Star Wars even knew when to tell its contained story, have some things be left-handed, but for the most part, stay simple, and then the sequels picked that up and did it very well. Again, I'm only speaking about the original trilogies. The other films, I understand people have their ways and feelings, but I'm just saying for the original trilogy, Lucas knew how to do that, along with the help of Lawrence Kasdan, involved in the script writing as well. Lucas knew when to stop. Snyder just doesn't know when to stop. He just keeps going and going, and it just feels agonizing all the way to the better end. But of course, the thing that always kills me with Snyder, the slow-mo is way too much. Like with every film of his, he just loves using slow-mo to where it really is a character on its own. It's amazing on how he manages to cram in slow motion in any sort of way so that way he feels as if it negates the runtime or just, again, makes the shots look cooler and awesome. And it pisses me off every time because I always believe in slow-mo should be once. You know, if you're going to do slow-mo or a slow motion sequence, it should be once or maybe even twice. That's it. You should not overuse slow-mo with every scene, and he just does that. How he incorporates it in the film is just, it's way too much. There's no need for all the slow-mo bullshit, but he just keeps on doing it. For this film to rival Star Wars, this doesn't come close. Not even close enough to be on par. Snyder brings on the technical side, but nothing on the creative side as a whole. This, overall, it's an average film at best. At best. This is average. I'm trying to be as fair as I can be, you guys, because for the most part, I would say that this is, for me, I thought this was just a waste of time and a waste of talent for me. But some people may not see it that way, and that's fine. I just feel like this was just utterly boring through and through. So I'm giving Rebel Moon Part 1 on A Child on Fire a 5 out of 10. I don't know how much Snyder can really think that this is some high art shit, because for you to rip off Star Wars, and again, Star Wars has done it, but at least Star Wars knows how to stand on its own. You know, when you look at Star Wars and Dune, you know, you could think, alright, they're the same, or like even some of Akira Kurosawa's films, they're the same, but at the very least, they are kind of distinctive from one another. This film just derives from so many things that I just don't even understand why Snyder even thought of remotely trying to rival those movies in so many ways. So I will now have Rebel Moon Part 2, the Scargiver review, and then I will be done with the April films and then into May's. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other movie TV show reviews coming soon.